Kim Dae-ho stood at the massive window of his quarters aboard Nexus Prime, watching ships from hundreds of different worlds dock at the neutral station. Some vessels looked like flowing metal sculptures that bent and twisted as they moved. Others appeared to be made of pure crystal, their surfaces catching starlight and throwing rainbows across the docking bay. A few ships seemed to be nothing more than balls of energy contained in invisible fields. After 30 years in the diplomatic service, Dae-ho thought he had seen everything, but this place still amazed him. Nexus Prime was the size of a small moon built by the Galactic Council as a meeting place for all the civilized species in the galaxy. 847 different species called this galaxy home, and most of them had representatives here. Dae-ho was the first human to hold the title of ambassador to the Galactic Council. Earth had only made contact with alien life. 5 years ago, when a Council scout ship had detected human radio signals, the meeting had been peaceful, but tense. The Council had been watching humanity for decades, trying to decide if humans were ready to join galactic society. Now, Dae-ho was here to represent all of humanity. The weight of that responsibility never left his shoulders. A soft chime indicated someone was at his door. "Come in," he called. Dr. Park So-young entered the room, carrying a datapad and looking worried. She was Earth's top expert on alien biology and culture, and she had been studying their council species for 3 years. If anyone could help Dae-ho navigate the complex politics of this place, it was her. "The council session starts in 2 hours, she said without greeting. "I have the latest intelligence reports from our people back home." Dae-ho turned from the window and sat down at his desk. "What's the situation?" So-young activated her data pad, and holographic images appeared in the air between them. "It's not good. 3 of the most powerful council species have been meeting in secret for the past 6 months. The Valdari, the Threx, and the Corvani are forming some kind of alliance." The images showed the 3 species So-young had mentioned. The Valdari looked like walking crystals, their bodies made of some transparent material that shifted colors based on their emotions. The Threx resembled giant insects with multiple arms and compound eyes that could see in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. The Corvani were the strangest of all beings of pure energy who had to wear special containment suits to interact with physical matter. "What kind of alliance?" Dae-ho asked. "The kind that's bad news for us," So-young replied. "Our intelligence? Sources say they've been discussing the human problem in their private meetings. They think we're expanding too fast and taking up too much space?" Dae-ho frowned. In the 5 years since first contact, humanity had established 31 colonies on previously uninhabited worlds. It seemed like a reasonable pace to him, but apparently not everyone agreed. "They're calling our expansion aggressive colonization?" So-young continued. "They say we're violating established territorial boundaries." "What territorial boundaries?" Dae-ho asked. "Every world we've settled was empty. We checked with the Council database before we landed on any of them. That's the problem. The Council has an unwritten rule that new species should expand slowly and ask permission before settling more than 10 worlds. We never asked permission for anything beyond our first 10 colonies." Dae-ho stood up and began pacing around the room. This was exactly the kind of bureaucratic nonsense he had been afraid of. Earth's government had studied the Council's laws carefully before beginning their expansion, but apparently there were unwritten rules that were just as important as the official ones. "How bad is this going to be?" he asked. So-young's expression grew even more worried. "I think today's session isn't going to be a normal diplomatic meeting. Our sources suggest it's going to be more like a trial. They're going to formally accuse U.S. of violating Council protocols and demand that we explain ourselves. And if our explanation isn't good enough, then we could be facing serious consequences. The Council has ways of dealing with species that don't follow the rules." Dae-ho stopped pacing and looked at his advisor. "What kind of consequences?" "Economic sanctions, travel restrictions, military intervention if necessary. The Council has forced other species to give up colonies before. In some cases, they've even forced entire civilizations to return to their homeworlds and stay there." The thought of humanity being trapped on Earth, forbidden from exploring the stars, made Daeho's stomach turn. Humans had dreamed of reaching other worlds for centuries. To have that dream taken away now would be devastating. Is there any good news in those reports? He asked. So Young hesitated. Well, we do have some allies. About 50 of the smaller council species seem to support us. They think the big three are too controlling and that new species should have the right to expand freely. 50 out of 847, Daeho said. Those aren't great odds. No, but it's something. And there's one more thing. Our military intelligence people have been keeping an eye on council fleet movements. They've noticed some unusual activity. In the past few weeks, she activated another hologram, this one showing a star map with various colored dots representing different fleets. Several large groups of ships were positioned near the borders of human space. These are council patrol fleets, So Young explained. Normally they stay near the core worlds, but lately they've been moving closer to our territory. Admiral Li Haiyan-Wu thinks they might be preparing for something. Daeho studied the map carefully. The fleet positions look suspiciously like a blockade formation. If the Council decided to take action against humanity, those ships would be in perfect position to cut off Earth from its colonies. How long have they been in those positions? He asked. About 3 weeks. Right around the time the secret meetings between the big three started getting more frequent. Daeho sat back down and rubbed his temples. The situation was worse than he had thought. It seemed like the Council had already decided that humanity was a problem that needed to be dealt with. Today's session might just be a formality before they took action. What's our best strategy for the hearing? He asked. So Young pulled up another file on her datapad. I've been working on that. We need to emphasize that we've followed all the official council laws. Every colony we've established has been on an uninhabited world. We've never interfered with other species or claimed territory that belonged to someone else. Will that be enough? I don't know. The problem is that the Council values stability above everything else. They've maintained peace in the galaxy for over 1,000 years by making sure no single species gets too powerful too quickly. From their perspective, we might look like a threat to that stability. Daeho stood up and walked back to the window. Outside, more ships were arriving for the council session. He could see the massive crystal vessels of the Valdari fleet, their surfaces glowing with an inner light. The Threk ships looked like giant metal insects bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. The Corvani vessels were harder to spot, appearing as distortions in space where their energy fields bent light around them. Dr. Park, he said quietly, in your opinion, what are the chances that we can resolve this diplomatically? So Young was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I think they've already made up their minds. This hearing is probably just for show, to make it look like they gave us a fair chance to explain ourselves. Daeho nodded slowly. He had been thinking the same thing. The question was, what could humanity do about it? They were one species against 846 others, with a military that was advanced by Earth standards but primitive compared to the Council's technology. Well, he said, turning back to So Young, I guess we'll find out what they want in a couple of hours. Are you ready for this? So Young gathered her datapads and stood up. As ready as anyone can be for the trial of an entire species? As she left the room, Daeho remained at the window, watching the alien ships and wondering if humanity's dream of exploring the stars was about to come to an end before it had truly begun. The council chamber was enormous, built to accommodate hundreds of different species with wildly different needs. Some delegates floated in tanks of liquid, others hung from the ceiling in web-like structures, and a few existed as patterns of light projected into the space. Kim Daeho sat in the section reserved for oxygen-breathing humanoids. Feeling very small and very alone, the chamber's center held a raised platform, where the three most powerful council members sat. Councillor Veltar of the Valdari resembled a walking diamond, his crystal body shifting from deep blue to angry red as he prepared to speak. Beside him, Counselor Jektha of the Threx clicked her mandibles together in what Deho had learned was either thought or irritation. The third figure, Supreme Counselor Thizes of the Corvani, appeared as a vaguely humanoid shape of crackling energy contained within a transparent suit. "The Council recognizes the human delegate," Veltar announced, his voice like wind chimes. "In a storm. Ambassador Kim Deho, you stand before us to answer charges of aggressive expansion and violation of galactic peace protocols." Deho stood slowly, keeping his expression calm despite the knot in his stomach. "Honored counselors, humanity is grateful for this opportunity to address the Council's concerns." "Grateful?" Jektha's compound eyes focused on him with unsettling intensity. "You should be. No species in the past 3 centuries has expanded as rapidly as yours without seeking proper authorization." "With respect, Counselor," Deho replied, "we have followed all published Council regulations. Every world we have settled was uninhabited and unclaimed according to the official database." Supreme Counselor Thizes leaned forward, energy crackling. Around his form, the official database, yes. But civilized species understand that there are protocols beyond mere legality. There is wisdom and patience in seeking guidance from those who have maintained galactic peace for a millennium. Dr. Park So-young, sitting behind Deho in the advisor section, quietly activated a recording device. This entire proceeding was being broadcast back to Earth, where government officials and military leaders were watching every word. "Perhaps," Veltar continued, "humans are simply too young to understand the delicate balance that keeps our galaxy stable. Your species has existed for what, 200,000 years? The Valdari have maintained civilization for over 2 million years. We have learned the value of restraint." Deho felt his temper rising but kept his voice level. "We appreciate the Council's experience. However, humanity has always believed that peaceful expansion benefits everyone. Our colonies trade freely with all Council species. We have caused no conflicts." "No conflicts?" Jektha's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Your expansion has destabilized 3 entire sectors. Established trade routes now have to accommodate human traffic. Resource allocation patterns that have existed for centuries are being disrupted. We have offered to coordinate our shipping schedules with existing traffic," Deho protested. "Every request for negotiation has been ignored or delayed by Council bureaucracy." The chamber filled with sounds of disapproval from dozens of different species. Some hissed, others produced subsonic rumbles, and a few flashed angry colors. Deho realized he had made a mistake by criticizing the Council's efficiency in public. Supreme Counselor Thizes raised one crackling hand for silence. "The human delegate seems to believe that 5 years of contact makes his species equal to those who have guided galactic civilization since before his world developed writing." "We don't claim to be equal in experience," Deho said carefully. "But we do claim the right to exist and expand peacefully within the law." "Rights must be earned," Veltar stated flatly. "And they can be revoked when a species proves itself unworthy of them." The threat was clear, and Deho felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the chamber's cool temperature. Behind him, So-young was frantically taking notes and sending encrypted messages back to Earth. Jektha stood up, her insectoid form towering over the platform. "The Council has discussed this matter extensively. We have reached a decision regarding humanity's future in galactic society." Deho's heart pounded as she continued. "Humanity has 30 standard days to comply with the following requirements. First, you will abandon 23 of your 31 colonies, keeping only your homeworld and 7 others that we will designate as acceptable." The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates reacted to this announcement. Some species seemed pleased, while others looked shocked at the harshness of the demand. "Second," Jektha continued once the noise died down, "all future human expansion must be approved by this Council before any settlements are established, no exceptions." Deho started to object, but Veltar cut him off with a gesture. "Third, as compensation for the disruption you have caused, humanity will provide the Council with complete technical specifications for your fusion drive technology, your quantum communication systems, and your terraforming techniques." And fourth, Supreme Counselor Thyses added, his energy form pulsing brighter, humanity will pay an annual tribute of rare earth minerals and manufactured goods. The amount to be determined by the Council's Economic Committee. Deho stared at the three council leaders in disbelief. These weren't reasonable demands for diplomatic negotiation. This was surrender. Complete and total surrender. You're asking us to give up 2/3 of our colonies? Surrender our technological advantages and become a tributary state, he said slowly. This isn't justice. This is conquest. This is reality, Thyses replied coldly. Your species expanded. Too far, too fast. Now you must accept the consequences of your arrogance. And if we refuse? Deho asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Veltar's crystal body shifted to a deep red color. Then you will face the combined might of 846 species, who value peace and stability over the selfish ambitions of one reckless race. The fleets are already in position, Shektha added with what Deho thought might be satisfaction. Your colonies are surrounded? Your homeworld is blockaded? Resistance would be futile and costly. Deho looked around the chamber, hoping to see some sign of support from the species So Young had mentioned as potential allies. Most of the smaller delegates avoided his gaze. A few looked sympathetic, but none spoke up. I need to consult with my government, Deho said finally. Of course, Thyses replied. You have 48 hours to deliver your answer. The council will remain in session until then. As the session adjourned, Deho walked slowly back to his quarters, So Young beside him. Neither spoke until they were safely behind closed doors with privacy shields activated. They planned this entire thing, So Young said angrily. The timing, the fleet movements, even the specific demands. This was never a hearing, it was an ultimatum delivery. Deho sat heavily in his chair and activated the quantum communicator that connected him directly to Earth. Within moments, Admiral Li Haianwu's face appeared on the holographic display. Admiral, Deho said, I assume you monitored the session? Every word, Li replied grimly. The President is calling an emergency meeting of the Security Council. General Yunjihai is already mobilizing our defense forces. What defense forces? Deho asked. We have 30 ships against thousands. Our colonies have minimal military protection. If they attack... Ambassador, Li interrupted, there are things you don't know about our military preparations. Things we've kept classified even from the diplomatic corps. So Young leaned forward. What kind of things? Li was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. Let's just say that we haven't been completely honest about our capabilities. Earth's military leadership has been preparing for this possibility since first contact. Preparing how? Deho pressed. I can't give you details over an open channel, even an encrypted one. But I can tell you this, we're not as helpless as we appear. The question is whether we're ready to show our hand. Deho felt a glimmer of hope. How long do you need to make that determination? Give us 24 hours. In the meantime, try to buy us more time if you can. And Ambassador? Don't agree to anything. Whatever happens, don't let them think we're backing down. The connection ended, leaving Deho and So Young alone with their thoughts. Outside the window, council ships continued to arrive at Nexus Prime. The show of force was impressive and intimidating. Do you think Earth really has some kind of secret weapon? So Young asked. Deho shrugged. I don't know. But I do know one thing about humans. We don't give up easily and we really don't like being bullied. He stood up and walked to the window, watching the alien fleets maneuvering in the distance. Tomorrow, he would have to face the council again with humanity's answer. Whatever that answer was, he suspected it would change everything. Kim Deho walked into the council chamber with a confidence that surprised even himself. Behind him followed Dr. Park So Young, but today she was accompanied by two people the council had never seen before. Commander Han Sujin wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's Intelligence Division. Her expression calm and professional. Dr. Shim Taek-young looked like a typical scientist, but the briefcase handcuffed to his wrist suggested he carried something very important, the council chamber. buzzed with curious sounds as delegates noticed the new arrivals. Counselor Valtar's crystal body shifted to a suspicious orange color as he watched the humans take their positions. Ambassador Kim, Supreme Counselor Thizes announced, his energy form crackling with anticipation. You return with additional personnel. We trust this means humanity has made its decision? Deho stood slowly, a slight smile on his face that made several council members shift uncomfortably. That smile didn't look like the expression of a defeated leader about to surrender. Indeed, we have, Supreme Counselor, Deho replied. But before I deliver Earth's response, I believe there are some matters we need to discuss, some misconceptions that need to be corrected. Jekta's compound eyes focused intently on the human delegation. Misconceptions? What misconceptions could a species with 5 years of galactic experience possibly have that we need to hear? Deho's smile grew wider. Oh, the misconceptions aren't ours, Counselor. They're yours. He gestured to Commander Han, who stepped forward and activated a holographic projector. The chamber's central display space filled with detailed star charts, ship specifications, and intelligence reports that made many delegates gasp in surprise. For the past 5 years, Deho began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, you have watched humanity expand across the galaxy. You have monitored our communications, tracked our ships, and observed our colonies. You believed you understood us completely. The holographic display shifted to show surveillance footage of various council species activities. Valdari crystal ships conducting secret meetings. Threx military bases preparing for war. Corvani energy beings planning invasion routes. What you didn't realize, Deho continued, is that we were watching you too? The chamber erupted in shock. Sounds from hundreds of different species. Valtar's crystal body flashed bright red with anger. Impossible, human technology is centuries behind ours. You don't have the capability for such surveillance. Commander Han stepped forward, her voice crisp and professional. With respect, Counselor, you're wrong about our capabilities. We've been monitoring Council activities since 6 months after first contact. Every secret meeting, every military movement, every classified communication. She activated another display showing detailed intelligence files on the 3 dominant species. Military strengths, economic dependencies, political weaknesses, and personal information about individual leaders scrolled past in overwhelming detail. How? Thizes demanded, his energy form pulsing with agitation. Our security measures are perfect. No species has ever penetrated our intelligence networks. Dr. Park So-young smiled and activated her own projector. That's because no species has ever tried our approach. You see, you've been looking for advanced technology, sophisticated spy equipment, and complex infiltration methods. The display showed what appeared to be ordinary council citizens going about their daily lives. Valdari crystal beings working in government offices. Threx insectoids serving in military positions. Corvani energy forms participating in high-level planning sessions. But those aren't actually your people, So-young continued. They're ours. The revelation hit the chamber like a shockwave. Delegates began talking frantically among themselves, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sound, light, and energy. Biological modification, So-young explained calmly. We didn't try to hide our technology from you. We hid ourselves among you. For 3 years, human agents have been living and working in your most secure facilities, appearing to be loyal. Citizens of your own species. Jektha rose from her seat, her mandibles clicking rapidly with rage. You're claiming that primitive humans have infiltrated the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy? Absurd! Commander Han activated another display. Agent codenamed Crystal 7 has been working in the Valdari High Command for 18 months. Agent Hivemind has been part of Threx military planning for 2 years. And Agent Energy Flow has attended your most classified Corvani strategic meetings for the past year. The displays showed internal documents, meeting recordings, and classified military plans that only the highest levels of each government should have known. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. This is an act of war, Valtara's voice rang like breaking glass. Espionage of this magnitude cannot be tolerated. Deho's expression hardened. War? You want to talk about war? Let's discuss the fleets you've positioned around human space. Let's talk about the invasion plans we found in your classified files. Let's examine the propaganda you've been spreading about humanity being a dangerous young species that needs to be controlled. Dr. Shin Tae-kyung finally opened his briefcase and pulled out a data crystal that glowed with internal light. This contains complete records of your conspiracy against humanity, military deployment orders, resource allocation plans, and communications between your three species planning our subjugation. He inserted the crystal into the chamber's main computer system. The display filled with intercepted messages between council leaders showing months of planning for what they called the Human Containment Protocol. You've been planning this since our first year of expansion, Deho said, his voice growing harder. Every diplomatic contact, every trade negotiation, every cultural exchange has been part of your plan to evaluate our weaknesses and determine how best to control us. Supreme Counselor Thizes tried to regain control of the situation. Even if, your accusations are true, it changes nothing. You are still one species against 846. Your espionage cannot overcome such overwhelming numbers. Commander Han smiled coldly. Numbers? Let's talk about numbers, Supreme Counselor. The display changed again, showing detailed analyses of Council military forces. But instead of showing overwhelming alien superiority, the charts revealed something else entirely. Of your 846 species, only 312 actually have significant military forces. Of those, only 67 have ships capable of interstellar warfare. And of those 67, only 19 have modern weapon systems. She continued methodically destroying the Council's perceived advantages. Most of your member species joined the Council for protection and trade benefits. They have no desire to fight in your war of conquest. In fact, our intelligence suggests that over 400 species would prefer a more democratic approach to galactic governance. Dr. Park So-young added her own analysis. Your 1,000-year peace has been maintained through fear and intimidation. But fear only works when the target believes they have no choice. We're here to offer them one. Deho stood up and looked directly at the three council leaders. You asked for humanity's response to your ultimatum. Here it is. We reject your demands completely. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not surrender our technology. We will not pay tribute to bullies and tyrants. The chamber fell silent except for the various ambient sounds of different species' life support systems. The magnitude of humanity's defiance was sinking in. Furthermore, Deho continued, we are prepared to offer protection and alliance to any species that wishes to leave this corrupt council and join a new galactic confederation based on equality and mutual respect rather than fear and submission. Veltara's crystal body pulsed with rage. You dare threaten the stability of galactic civilization? You would destroy 1,000 years of peace for your selfish ambitions? Peace? Deho laughed, a sound that somehow carried menace despite its apparent humor. You call this peace? 200 species have been crushed into submission over the past millennium. Entire civilizations have been forced to abandon their dreams of exploration because you three species wanted to maintain your monopoly on power. He looked around the chamber at the hundreds of delegates, many of whom were listening with obvious interest. That's not peace, he said firmly. That's tyranny. And humanity has never been very good at tolerating tyrants. Commander Han stepped forward one final time. Oh, and Supreme Counselor, about those fleets you have surrounding our space? You might want to check on them. As if on cue, emergency alerts began flashing throughout the chamber as reports came in from the councils. Military commanders. The carefully positioned fleets that were supposed to blockade humanity had problems of their own to worry about. The emergency alerts filling the council chamber grew louder and more urgent with each passing second. Counselor Veltar's crystal body flickered between colors as he tried to process incoming reports from his military commanders. Shektha's mandibles clicked frantically as she received increasingly disturbing updates about her fleets. Supreme Counselor Tice's energy form pulsed with barely controlled fury as the situation spiraled beyond his control. Kim Deho stood calmly in the center of the chaos, watching the three most powerful beings in the galaxy realize that their carefully planned trap had become their own prison. "What have you done?" Veltar demanded, his voice like crystal bells cracking under pressure. Deho's expression remained peaceful, almost serene. "We've given you exactly what you wanted, Counselor. You spent months planning a war against humanity. You positioned your fleets. You prepared your weapons. You issued your ultimatum." His voice grew harder with each word. "You wanted war? You got it." A holographic projection suddenly appeared in the chamber's center, showing Admiral Li Hyunwoo in the command center of what appeared to be a massive warship. The council delegates fell silent as they realized they were looking at human military technology far more advanced than anything they had expected. "Admiral," Deho said formally, "please update the council on the current tactical situation." Li's weathered face showed no emotion as he delivered his report. "As of 30 minutes ago, all council fleets threatening human space have been neutralized or disabled. Operation Checkmate is proceeding according to plan." Tice's energy form flared brighter. "Impossible. Our fleets outnumber your entire military 10 to 1. "Your fleets," Li replied calmly, "were exactly where we expected them to be, doing exactly what we knew they would do. You've been following a strategic doctrine that hasn't changed in 300 years. We've been studying it for 5. Another holographic display activated, showing the space around human colonies. Where council fleets had been positioned for blockade operations, human ships now held them at gunpoint. But these weren't the simple fusion-powered vessels the council had observed during humanity's expansion. These ships were sleek, deadly, and clearly built for war. Captain Nam Junsu appeared on the display, reporting from the bridge of a massive human dreadnought. "The Valdari Third Fleet attempted to resist our initial contact. They've been reminded that resistance is inadvisable. No casualties on either side, but their weapon systems are offline and their ships are dead in space." Veltar's crystal body went completely white with shock. "The Third Fleet has never been defeated. It's commanded the respect of the galaxy for 5 centuries. "Commanded by fear, you mean," Commander Han Soo-jin corrected. "Your energy weapons are impressive against targets that can't see them coming. Unfortunately for you, we've known about them for 3 years. We developed countermeasures long ago." Dr. Shin Tae-kyung stepped forward with another data crystal. "Would you like to see how we did it? Our scientists have been very creative with your own technology." The chamber's displays showed human ships using energy shields that not only deflected council weapons but absorbed them, converting the attacking energy into power for their own systems. Council ships designed to overwhelm enemies with superior firepower found themselves making their targets stronger with every shot. "That's our technology," Jektha screeched. "You've stolen our defensive systems." "Improved them, actually, Doctor," Park So-young said with scientific pride. "Your shields stop energy, ours redirect it, your armor resists impact. Ours distributes it, your weapons fire in straight lines, ours ... As if to demonstrate her point, the display showed human weapons in action. Instead of the simple kinetic projectiles the council expected, human ships fired what appeared to be streams of liquid metal that curved around enemy shields and struck their targets from impossible angles. "Adaptive projectiles," So-young explained. "They adjust their trajectory based on target movement and defensive measures. Very difficult to avoid when you don't understand the technology." Captain Cho Min-ho appeared on another communication channel, his voice crackling with excitement. "Ambassador, you should see this. The Corvani Energy Fleet tried to use their dimensional phasing trick to attack our positions. Turns out our sensors work just fine in folded space. They weren't expecting return fire from dimensions, they thought. We're safe. Tice's energy form flickered with what might have been fear. How did you develop counters to technologies you've never encountered before? Commander Han smiled coldly. We told you. We've been watching you for 3 years. Every weapon test, every tactical exercise, every strategic planning session. Our people recorded everything and sent it back to Earth for analysis, but your military was tiny. Veltar protested. Intelligence reports showed you had fewer than 50 warships? Intelligence reports showed you what we wanted you to see, Admiral Lee corrected. Those 50 ships were our exploration and patrol vessels. Our actual military has been building in secret for 4 years, ever since we realized the galaxy wasn't as peaceful as you claimed. The display switched to show massive industrial facilities hidden in asteroid fields and nebulas throughout human space. Shipyards that had been constructing vessels while disguised as mining operations. Weapons factories that appeared to be simple manufacturing plants. Training facilities that looked like research stations. You see, Deho said, walking closer to the 3 council leaders, humanity learned something important during our first year of galactic contact. We learned that the universe is full of predators who disguise themselves as protectors. We decided to prepare accordingly. Colonel Bayunji's voice came through the communication system from what appeared to be a space station. Human Marine battalions have secured 17 Council command posts without firing a shot. Turns out it's easy to capture facilities when your people have been working inside them for years. The Council's greatest weakness, Commander Han explained, is that you've never faced an enemy that understood you completely before engaging. Every species you've conquered was surprised by your tactics. We've had 3 years to study how you fight, how you think, and how you make decisions. Dr. Shin Taekyung activated his final presentation. You want to know humanity's real secret weapon? It's not our technology, though, that's quite good. It's not our tactics, though, those are effective. It's our philosophy. The display showed human colonies, but not as the Council had seen them. Instead of simple settlements, they revealed themselves as integrated defense networks. Every human world was a fortress, every space station was a weapons platform, and every civilian ship could transform into a military vessel within hours. You rule through fear and submission, Shin continued. You maintain power by keeping other species weak and dependent. But humans have a different approach. We believe that everyone is stronger when they're free to reach their full potential. Which brings us to our real announcement, Deho said, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. Humanity is officially withdrawing from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We're forming a new alliance called the Free Worlds Federation. Membership is open to any species that prefers cooperation to domination. The chamber erupted. As delegates from hundreds of species began talking excitedly among themselves. Many looked interested in this alternative to council rule. Furthermore, Deho continued, raising his voice above the noise, any council species that wishes to join us will receive protection from retaliation. Human fleets are prepared to defend any world that chooses freedom over tyranny. Veltaras. Crystal Body pulsed with rage. You cannot destroy 1,000 years of galactic order. The chaos would be unimaginable. The only chaos, Deho replied, will be in your attempts to maintain control over people who no longer fear you. The age of council dominance is over. The age of galactic freedom has begun. Thizes tried one last threat. Even if you've neutralized our fleets temporarily, you cannot stand against the combined might of 800 species forever. Deho's smile returned, cold and confident. Supreme Counselor, you still don't understand. We're not standing against 800 species. We're offering 400 of them a better choice. And judging by the messages Commander Han is receiving, they're very interested in what we have to offer. The displays showed incoming communications from dozens of council species, all asking about membership in humanity's new federation. The Council's empire was crumbling in real time, and there was nothing the 3 leaders could do to stop it. The council chamber had become a communication center as species after species reached out to learn more about humanity's Free Worlds Federation. But while diplomats talked, The real battle was happening in space around dozens of star systems. Captain Cho Min-ho stood on the bridge of his stealth ship Soul's Pride, watching Council fleets struggle to understand what was happening to them. For 3 years, his ship had been gathering intelligence while pretending to be a simple survey vessel. Now, it was time to put that knowledge to use. "Target the command ship first," he ordered his crew. "Remember, we want to disable, not destroy. Dead enemies can't surrender." His weapons officer, Lieutenant Park Dong-woo, nodded and targeted the Valdari flagship. The ship's crystal hull gleamed in the starlight, beautiful and seemingly invincible. But Min-ho knew exactly where its weaknesses were. "Fire," he ordered. The human weapon didn't look like much, just a small projectile moving at incredible speed. But when it hit the Valdari ship's main power crystal, the entire vessel went dark. The proud flagship of the Third Fleet was now drifting helplessly in space. "This is Captain Cho Min-ho of the Earth Federation Navy," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Your command ship is disabled. Your weapons are offline. You have 2 choices: surrender now and be treated with honor, or continue fighting and face the consequences." The Valdari fleet commander's response came quickly. "Human vessel, this is Fleet Admiral Kelvar. You have attacked ships of the Galactic Council. This is an act of war," Min-ho almost laughed. "Admiral, your council declared war on humanity when you positioned your fleets around our colonies. We're just responding to your aggression. But we're not like you. We don't enjoy killing. Surrender, and your crews will be safe." While Min-ho negotiated with the Valdari fleet, similar scenes were playing out across human space. General Yoon Ji-hai coordinated the overall strategy from her command center on Earth, watching as human forces engaged council ships in 17 different star systems. "Report from Sector 7, her aide announced. "Major Kwon Dong-yuk's marine teams have secured the Threx listening post on Kepler Station. They captured 43 enemy personnel without casualties." "Sector 12 reporting," another voice called out. "The Korvani Energy Fleet attempted to retreat through hyperspace. Captain Lee Soo-min's squadron was waiting for them when they dropped back into normal space." Ji-hai nodded with satisfaction. This was going exactly as planned. For months, human intelligence had been tracking Council fleet movements and predicting their responses. Every enemy action had been anticipated and countered. Her communication system activated, showing Major Kwon Dong-yuk reporting from the captured station. "General, you were right about their command structure. Once we disabled their central computer, the entire defensive network shut down. Their automated systems couldn't function without constant oversight." "That's the difference between our philosophies," Ji-hai replied. "They build systems that require slaves to operate. We build systems that empower people to think for themselves." The Major's report continued. "We also found something interesting in their computer files. They've been intercepting communications from dozens of Council species expressing dissatisfaction with the current government. Apparently, we're not the only ones who think the Council needs to change. This was valuable intelligence." Ji-hai immediately forwarded the information to Commander Han Soo-jin, who was still at Nexus Prime with Ambassador Kim. The more they could prove that the Council was unpopular with its own members, the easier it would be to build their new federation. Meanwhile, in space near the human colony of New Seoul, Captain Nam Jun-soo was dealing with a more stubborn enemy. The Threx battle fleet had refused multiple surrender demands and was preparing for a final assault on the human settlement. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the Threx are powering up their planet-killer weapons. They're targeting the colony directly." Nam's expression hardened. Threatening civilian populations was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "All ships, activate battle formation hammer strike. Time to show them why attacking human civilians is a very bad idea." The human fleet moved with precision that amazed the watching Threx commanders. Instead of the chaotic individual ship actions they expected, the humans fought as a single organism. Ships covered each other perfectly, shared targeting data instantly, and coordinated their attacks with mechanical efficiency, but the real surprise came when the Threx fired their planet killer beam at New Seoul. The weapon was designed to crack continents and boil oceans. It should have wiped out the human colony completely. Instead, the beam struck an invisible barrier around the planet and simply disappeared. Impossible! The Threx fleet commander broadcast in shock. No shield can stop a planet killer? Captain Nam smiled grimly. You're right. No shield can stop it. But our planetary defense system doesn't use shields. It uses phase displacement. Your weapon just fired into empty space in another dimension? Dr. Park So-young had developed the theory 3 years ago after studying captured Council weapons. If energy could be redirected, why not redirect it completely out of normal spacetime? The colony hadn't been protected by stopping the attack, it had been protected by making the attack hit nothing at all. This is your final warning, Nam. Broadcast to the Threx fleet. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences of threatening human civilians. The Threx commander's response was to fire everything his fleet had at the human ships. Hundreds of energy beams and missile swarms filled the space between the two forces. It was an impressive display of firepower that should have overwhelmed any defense, but the human ships didn't try to block the attacks. They simply weren't there when the weapons arrived. Advanced maneuvering systems allowed them to shift position in ways that violated everything the Council thought they knew about space combat. How are they moving like that? The Threx commander demanded of his science officer. Unknown, sir. Their drives appear to be manipulating spacetime itself. They're not just moving through space, they're bending it around themselves. Nam's counterattack was swift and decisive. Human weapons designed specifically to penetrate Threx armor struck the enemy ships with devastating accuracy. But instead of destroying them, the weapons disabled engines, weapons, and life support systems while leaving the crew compartments intact. Attention Threx fleet, Nam broadcast. Your ships are disabled, your crews are alive. You can surrender now and be treated according to the laws of war, or you can wait for your life support to fail. Your choice. The surrender came within minutes. Similar victories were being reported from across human space. Admiral Lee Hyun-woo coordinated the overall campaign from his flagship. Watching as Council resistance crumbled system by system, the Corvani 4th Fleet has surrendered, reported Captain Song Yujin from the Tau Ceti system. They're requesting permission to join our Federation. The Valdari mining fleet at Alpha Centauri is offering to share their crystal-growing technology in exchange for protection, added Commander Kim Min-seo, but the most important report came from Colonel Bae-yoon-ji, who was leading a special mission to capture the Council's primary military computer network. General Ji-hai, we've successfully infiltrated the main command center, she reported from deep inside a heavily fortified space station. Dr. Shin Taekyung's computer viruses worked perfectly. We now have access to all Council military communications. What are you finding? I asked. Chaos, Yunji replied with satisfaction. Half their species are refusing to follow orders. A third of their fleets are requesting permission to return to their home systems. And about 50 different governments are asking for direct communication with Ambassador Kim. The colonel continued her report. It gets better. We found evidence that the 3 ruling species have been lying to their own allies about human capabilities. Most of the Council thought we only had primitive weapons and a few dozen ships. They're shocked to learn their leaders knew the truth and sent them into battle anyway. This was the breakthrough they needed. Commander Han Soo-jin had been right. The Council's greatest weakness was that their empire was built on lies and fear. Once those lies were exposed, the empire would collapse from within. Colonel, Ji-hai ordered, transmit all that evidence to every Council species simultaneously. Let them see exactly how their leaders have been treating them. The information burst went out across the galaxy, reaching hundreds of worlds in minutes. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Council member species began withdrawing from the war, demanding explanations from their leaders, and opening direct communication channels with humanity. Within 6 hours of the fighting starting, the Galactic Council's military power was broken. Not through massive destruction, but through superior strategy, advanced technology, and the simple truth that most people prefer freedom to slavery when given the choice. The Galactic Council's empire was crumbling faster than anyone had thought possible. In the space of 12 hours, humanity had turned what should have been their destruction into the Council's worst nightmare. But the real shock came when species after species began abandoning their ancient overlords. Kim Deho stood in the council chamber watching the chaos unfold. Emergency sessions were being called every few minutes as member species demanded answers. The three ruling powers, Valdari, Threx, and Corvani, were struggling to maintain any appearance of control. Ambassador, Commander Han Soo-jin whispered, showing him her datapad, "We're receiving surrender offers from 17 different council fleets. But more importantly, we're getting alliance requests from 43 species." The numbers were staggering. In less than half a day, nearly 10% of the council's membership was asking to join humanity's Free Worlds Federation. And the requests kept coming. Dr. Park So-young activated her holographic display to show the current situation across the galaxy. Red dots marked council forces still fighting. Blue dots showed human positions. But the most significant were the green DOT's council species that had declared neutrality or were actively switching sides. The Zilani Republic was the first to break away, she reported quietly. They've declared independence from the council and are requesting immediate membership in our federation. The Morta Confederacy followed an hour later. Deho watched as Councillor Veltar tried desperately to maintain order in the chamber. The crystal being's body was cycling through colors so rapidly it was making other delegates dizzy. "Order!" Veltar demanded, his voice cracking like breaking glass. "The Council has maintained galactic peace for 1,000 years. You cannot abandon that stability for the promises of an untested species." But his words fell on increasingly deaf ears. The smaller species that had been silent for centuries were finally finding their voices. "Peace?" demanded Ambassador Crix of the Fenari, a bird-like species that had been under council control for 400 years. "You call it peace when our trade routes are controlled by your companies? When our young people are forced to work in your factories? When our governments need your permission to make basic decisions?" Similar voices rose throughout the chamber. Species after species began listing grievances they had held for generations but never dared speak aloud. The facade of willing cooperation was dissolving, revealing the fear and resentment that had always existed beneath the surface. Captain Nam Jun-soo's voice came through the communication system from his position near the former Threx battle. "Zone. Ambassador, we've got something interesting here. The Threx crew we captured are asking to defect. Apparently, their soldiers have been told for years that other species were happy under council rule. They're shocked to learn the truth." This was exactly what human intelligence had predicted. The council's biggest lie wasn't about their military strength. It was about their popular support. Most of their own people believed they were benevolent protectors maintaining willing alliances. Admiral Lee Hyun-woo appeared on the main display, reporting from his flagship. "Sir, we're seeing mass defections across all council fleets. It seems that when their soldiers learned they were fighting to maintain an empire built on lies, many decided they'd rather fight to tear it down." The proof came in the form of intercepted communications that Commander Han had been monitoring. Council military units were refusing orders, demanding to speak with their home governments, and in some cases actively joining human forces. "The Corvani 7th Energy Squadron just requested permission to escort our ships," reported Captain Lee Soo-min from the Outer Rim. "They say they want to help us liberate other systems." But the most dramatic moment came when General Yoon Ji-hai announced the success of a special operation that had been planned for months. "Operation Truth Broadcast is complete," she reported. "We've taken control of the Council's main communication network. Every citizen on every council world is now receiving the classified documents that prove how their leaders really view them." The documents were devastating. Internal council communications referred to member species as resources to be managed and populations to be controlled. There were detailed plans for suppressing any species that showed signs of independence. and casual discussions about using starvation and economic warfare to maintain obedience. "Look at this," Dr. Shen Taekyung said, highlighting one particularly damning message. A Valdari administrator complaining that the Altarian people are becoming too educated and suggesting they limit access to advanced technology to keep them dependent. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and explosive. Governments that had supported the Council for centuries began issuing statements of condemnation. Entire star systems declared independence. Military units switched sides en masse. The Third Valdari Fleet just surrendered to Captain Cho Minho, reported Colonel Bei Yunji from her position at a captured command post. But here's the interesting part. They're not surrendering to avoid destruction. They're surrendering because they want to join our side. This was the pattern emerging everywhere. Council forces weren't being defeated in battle. They were choosing to stop fighting once they understood what they had really been fighting for. Major Kwon Dong-yuk's voice crackled through the communication system from a recently liberated Threx colony world. "General, you need to see this. The local population is celebrating in the streets. They're calling us liberators, not conquerors." The scenes being broadcast from dozens of worlds showed the same thing. Populations that had appeared content under council rule were revealing their true feelings now that they felt safe to do so. Celebrations, protests against their former overlords, and requests for protection from retaliation were coming from across the galaxy. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Park So-young observed, studying the data flowing in from their intelligence networks. "We're witnessing the collapse of the largest empire in galactic history, and it's happening without massive bloodshed. That had been humanity's goal from the beginning. Unlike the Council, which maintained power through fear and violence, humans wanted to win through offering a better alternative. The strategy was proving more effective than anyone had dared hope. Supreme Councilor Thizes finally abandoned his attempts to maintain dignity and began making direct threats. "Species that betray the Council will face consequences. Your worlds will be blockaded, your populations will starve." But his threats rang hollow. The Council's fleets were disabled, defeated, or defecting. Their economic power was evaporating as trade networks collapsed. And most importantly, the fear that had kept their empire together for a millennium was gone. "Councilor Thizes," Daeho said calmly, "your threats would be more impressive if you still had the power to carry them out. But your fleets are defeated. Your allies are abandoning you, and your own people are learning the truth about your government." Commander Han activated another display showing the current state of Council military forces. Of the original thousands of ships that had threatened human space, fewer than 200 were still following Council orders. The rest had surrendered, defected, or simply returned home. "The Corvani home fleet just declared independence from the Council government," she reported. "They're asking for human protection while they establish a new democratic government." This was the most shocking development yet. The Corvani were one of the 3 ruling species, and now even they were abandoning the empire they had helped create. "How is this possible?" Jektha demanded, her mandibles clicking with distress. "We gave them order. We gave them peace. We protected them from chaos. You gave them slavery," Daeho replied simply. "And you called it peace." But people always remember what freedom feels like, even after generations of oppression. Once they have a choice, they'll choose freedom every time. The chamber fell silent as the magnitude of the change became clear. The Galactic Council's 1,000-year empire was ending not with a bang, but with a whimper as their subjects simply walked away. "The age of forced unity is over," Daeho announced to the remaining delegates. "The age of chosen cooperation has begun." 3 weeks had passed since the collapse of the Galactic Council's empire. Kim Daeho stood once again in the great chamber of Nexus Prime, but everything had changed. Where once 847 species had gathered under the rule of 3 dominant powers, now representatives from over 400 worlds had come to establish something entirely new. The chamber itself looked different. The raised platform where the Valdari, Threx, and Corvani had lorded over their subjects was gone, replaced by a circular arrangement where every species sat as equals. No thrones, no symbols of dominance, just simple seats arranged so that everyone could see and hear each other clearly. Daeho walked to the center of the circle, carrying with him the founding charter of the Free Worlds Federation, Dr. Park So-young. Sat with the other human delegates, her datapads showing the incredible progress they had made in just 3 weeks. "Fellow representatives," Daeho began, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's new acoustic system, "we gather today not as subjects and rulers but as equals choosing to work together for our mutual benefit." The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Delegates from hundreds of species showed their approval in ways ranging from applause to harmonic singing to patterns of colored light. The contrast with the old council sessions, where silence had been expected and dissent forbidden, was striking. "The Free Worlds Federation is based on 3 simple principles," Daeho continued. "First, every member species has an equal voice in our decisions. Second, membership is voluntary, and any world can leave at any time. Third, we exist to protect each other's freedom, not to control each other's choices." Ambassador Crix of the Fenari stood up, her feathers bright with excitement. "Ambassador Kim, 3 weeks ago my people were forced to sell our agricultural products at prices set by the Council. Today, we've negotiated fair trade agreements with 17 different worlds. Our farmers are earning more than they have in 2 centuries. Similar success stories came from around the chamber. The Mortok Confederacy had reopened universities that the Council had forced them to close. The Zelani Republic was building new ships for the first time in 400 years. Species after species shared how their lives had improved since gaining their freedom, but the most significant changes were happening among the 3 former ruling species themselves. The Corvani had split into dozens of smaller nations, each experimenting with democratic government. The Threx homeworld was experiencing its first free elections in a millennium. Even some Valdari crystal colonies had joined the Federation. Despite strong opposition from their traditional leaders, Admiral Lee Hyun-woo appeared on the communication system to give a military update. "The Federation Defense Force now includes ships and personnel from 83 different species," he reported. "Our combined fleets are stronger than the old Council forces ever were, but more importantly, every ship serves voluntarily. This was crucial for the Federation's survival. The 3 former ruling powers had not given up entirely. Remnants of their fleets still controlled about 30% of the galaxy, and they were making threats about reconquering their lost territories. What's the status of the remaining Council forces?" Daeho asked. General Yun Ji-hai took over the report. "Councillor Veltar has gathered the last loyal Valdari fleets at their core worlds. They're trying to rebuild their military power, but they're facing massive defections every day. It turns out that even their own people prefer freedom to the old system." The news about the Threx was even more encouraging. "Jektha's government controls less than 20 worlds now," Ji-hai continued. "Most of the Threx military has joined us, and their home systems are requesting Federation membership. But Supreme Councillor Thizes and the Corvani remnants were proving more stubborn. The energy beings are trying to maintain control through economic warfare," Commander Han Soo-jin reported. "They're threatening to cut off power supplies to any world that joins us." "How are we handling that?" asked Ambassador Ilix of the Sartani, a species that had been particularly dependent on Corvani energy technology. Dr. Shin Taekyung stood up with a satisfied smile. "We've solved that problem. Human scientists working with Federation researchers have developed new power generation methods that don't require Corvani technology. In fact, our new systems are more efficient and environmentally friendly." This was typical of the Federation's approach to problems. Instead of using force to overcome obstacles, they found better solutions that made the obstacles irrelevant. It was a strategy that frustrated their enemies and impressed potential new members. Captain Nam Junsu's voice came through the communication system from his patrol near the border. "I'm seeing something interesting out here. 3 more Valdari Colony fleets just crossed into Federation space. They're not attacking, they're requesting asylum? This had become a daily occurrence. Military units, entire colonies, and even government officials from the remaining Council territories were fleeing to Federation space. The contrast between freedom and oppression was becoming impossible to ignore. The truth is, Dr. Park So-young observed, the old Council system is collapsing under its own weight. When people have to choose between freedom and slavery and they're not afraid of retaliation, the choice is obvious. Captain Cho Minho reported from his position near a former Threx stronghold. The local population just voted to join the Federation. That makes it 412 member worlds as of today. The growth was accelerating. What had started as humanity plus a few dozen brave species had become a galactic confederation that was larger and more powerful than the remaining Council forces, but Daeho knew that military strength wasn't what would ensure the Federation's long-term success. The real test would be whether they could govern themselves better than their predecessors had governed them. Delegates, he said, calling for attention, we've proven that we can defeat tyranny. Now we must prove that we can build something better to replace it. The challenge was enormous. 400 different species with wildly different cultures, technologies, and needs had to find ways to work together as equals. There would be disagreements, conflicts, and mistakes along the way. That's why we're starting with the Federation. Council, Daeho explained. Every member world gets one vote, regardless of size or military power. Decisions require majority approval, and any member can call for review of any policy. Major Kwon Dong-yuk's voice came through from a recently liberated world. Sir, you should see what's happening here. Former council subjects are teaching each other technologies that were restricted for centuries. A Morduk engineer is showing Fenari farmers how to build better irrigation systems. A Zilani doctor is sharing medical techniques with a dozen different species. This was exactly what the Federation's founders had hoped for. Instead of hoarding knowledge to maintain power, member species were sharing freely to benefit everyone. The old council kept us separated and suspicious of each other, observed Ambassador Drun of the Kixari, a reptilian species that had joined the Federation in its second week. They told us that other species were dangerous competitors. Now we're discovering that we're natural partners. Colonel Bae-Yun-ji reported from the Federation's new intelligence center. Our monitoring stations are detecting massive communication increases between member worlds. Trade, scientific cooperation, cultural exchange, it's all growing exponentially. The numbers were staggering. In 3 weeks, the Federation had facilitated more interspecies cooperation than the Council had allowed in 3 centuries. But what happens when the remaining Council forces try to strike back? Asked Ambassador Vex of the Altarians, voicing the concern many delegates shared. Commander Han smiled confidently. Let them try. The old Council ruled through fear because their subjects had no choice. The Federation exists because our members choose to be here. When people are fighting for their own freedom instead of someone else's power, they're much more motivated. As if to prove her point, Captain Lee Sumin's voice came through the communication system. 3 Corvani energy fleets just attempted to attack the Zilani Republic. They were met by a combined defense force of 47 different species. The attack failed completely, and 2 of the attacking fleets have surrendered and requested Federation membership. The chamber erupted in celebration. This was the proof they needed that the Federation could defend itself without becoming the oppressive empire they had replaced. The age of galactic tyranny is over, Daeho declared as the celebration continued around him. The age of galactic freedom has begun, and this time it's here to stay. Outside the chamber's windows, ships from hundreds of different worlds docked peacefully at Nexus Prime. No longer was it a symbol of imposed unity under threat of force. Now it was a voluntary gathering place where free peoples chose to work together. For their mutual benefit, the dream that had started with one human refusing to bow before bullies had become a galactic revolution. And it was just the beginning.